This is Reality Dispatch, written by Jim Mins.
It had been 12 years. The news articles were no longer written. The crowds had died down. International interest had waned. Yet she never lost the desire to see for herself. She worked the bars, tending to the beers of the patrons as they drank themselves stupid. She earned enough from these jobs to save for a modest plane ticket and a cheap hotel. She had bought herself 5 days in Milan, then she was to return. Perhaps if she could see for herself what had happened, perhaps it would all make sense. The mysticism behind the forces that decided to enact such a drastic supernatural event would bestow upon her a knowledge reserved only for the most reverent, the most deserving of otherworldly wisdom. She didn't know. She was saddened every day that passed, and she only thought of one thing, a desire to see. But not just to see, a desire to feel. "I'd like to get to Santa Maria delle Grazie," she told the cab driver. He frowned and raised an eyebrow. "Santa Maria delle Grazie, sì, he said. The car went into gear and the journey from the bus terminal began. All those nights wondering, looking at the articles, reading them one by one, listening to the podcasts that discussed theories, hours upon hours of them, some plausible, some downright outrageous. All of them fed her fascination. The cab driver said something to her in his native tongue and laughed. She smiled back at him. As he caught a glimpse of her attempt to accommodate his humor, his expression turned to a frown. They arrived 30 minutes later, and he pointed at the fare she owed. She paid him in euros, and he scoffed at her tip. Something had set him off, though she didn't know what it was. She had pre-purchased her tickets inside the church, and the entrance gate was easy to find. She followed the signs and the foot traffic. It had mostly died down since the revelation. An English woman, recently widowed, stood next to her in the line. "I came here in the 1970s with my husband," she said. "I just wanted to see how different it was now that it had been radically changed." "Do you think it was a miracle or vandalism?" Nadine asked. The woman took her time before answering. "I'm not sure. I guess I need to see for myself before I make a judgment." The line progressed at a steady pace. "I don't think they get the numbers quite like they used to," the woman explained. "It was a long time ago, but you should have seen this place in 1976. You had to stay the night if you wanted to see the fresco. The lineup was atrocious." "Did you stay?" "No, I'm exaggerating, dear. But let me tell you, it's quite sad to such little interest these days." I guess that's the real tragedy in all of this. They were meters away from the entrance, and the concierge, a moonlighting nun, checked their tickets and allowed them access. Nadine's heart gave a shudder. She discovered she was holding her breath. She had waited 8 years to see the painting. That was how long ago she had set her plan in motion. That was when the sadness began. 12 years since the painting changed, 8 since her melancholy. The tourists walked at a snail's pace, eager to soak in the artworks that adorned the walls. Nadine bypassed them all and headed for the refectory, following all the arrows marked with the Last Supper silhouette above them. As she arrived at the wall in question, she first noticed the guard standing with his hands clasped over his groin as he monitored the audience gathered. She looked down and swallowed before looking up to see the piece for herself, unfiltered, unvarnished, with her own eyes. It was as breathtaking and as frightening as the first time she had seen it. The Last Supper, Da Vinci's masterpiece, beautifully crafted in the Renaissance fashion with expert precision. All the expressions caught in a moment many thought uncatchable. Everyone's expression, that is, except Christ and Thomas. There was an empty place in the center and at the far right. 2 of the 13 guests had left the table under the cover of darkness on a winter's night 12 years prior, gone without a trace. Many experts believed it was the hand of a villain, a precise artist who had pulled off the prank of the century. Others believed it was the work of God himself. The mystery was as enticing as the painting. Yet since Jesus vanished from the frame, the crowds had started to wither. Not immediately. At first, they gathered in their thousands. But nowadays, the image was seen more as a symbol of sadness. Why did Christ leave the table? It was a question she had been chasing her whole life. But there were supplementary questions also, such as, Why did Thomas leave as well? Where did they go, and why did the others stay? She stepped closer and closer, staring at the empty space between Peter and John, the place that once housed Jesus before his departure. "You can see the cross strokes from where the brush has gone over the outline," she heard one onlooker explain to his colleague. "That's definitely an addition in the last decade. The paint is brighter and more vivid than the earlier pigments, and it's well known that Da Vinci never held a brush at such an angle." She knew he was wrong. There was no evidence to suggest that a Vandal artist had systematically removed Jesus and Thomas from the work and covered their tracks by faithfully recreating the background, only to give away their meticulousness with such a careless mistake in brush technique. I guess you can see that happening. I mean, if you were doing this in the dead of night and had to act quickly, you'd be careless in how you painted in the background, his colleague agreed. She rolled her eyes. Their commentary was distracting. She was here for one reason, to see how she felt, looking on the evidence of a miracle. She looked at the empty space at the center of the table. She turned her head right and looked at the space left by Thomas. She breathed in the scene and hoped for an answer to be laid upon her like a dove from the clouds. She closed her eyes and hoped.
For more stories of fact-based fiction, head to jimmins.substack.com.